Everybody always asks, why in this relationship has it changed you? What is it beyond his looks or his accolades that make me so attracted to this relationship and working for it? Like actually working for it, like changing myself, growing. It's the
lovers and friends. I'ma take you on a trip, baby, I don't pretend. I said, lovers and friends. I'ma hold you down to the end. I said.
What's up, lovers and friends, and welcome to the Lovers and Friends podcast. My name is Shan and I'm a sexologist who's been working as a public figure educator for 15 years. I've talked about sex and relationships everywhere, from The View to Playboy and from YouTube to Netflix. This right here is my first podcast where I bring everything together, combining my educational background in psychology, sexology, and journalism to deep dive into all things intimacy, which I define as anything under the umbrella of sex, relationships, and attachment. We start with a question, and by the end, not only will you leave with some answers, you'll also leave with a hell of a lot to talk about with your own lovers and friends. So today, we are tackling the question, should you change who you are in order to keep the lover that you want to be with? Today's guest is the Emmy award-winning producer and host, Jeannie Mai, and she's going to talk about how her marriage to Young Jeezy transformed her in ways that didn't just surprise her, it also shocked the globe. Because it's not even just a life change, it's a brand change.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot, and your brand is you.
Yeah, my brand is me, and my brand has always been, I'm me, and I don't happen to want to have children.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it was. And the nerves were still there and still are.
But before we get deeper into that interview, I just want to spend some time with you and I really chewing on that question, because I think you probably heard that one or two different ways. So again, I'm going to rewind. The question I asked you was, should you change who you are in order to keep the lover that you want to be with? But I'm going to guess you either heard me say, A, should I try to be someone that I'm not through lying, denying, and falsifying my truth so that I can play the role of someone that someone else thinks is worthy of love and acceptance? In essence, do I reject the real me so that the fake one gets chose? Jeannie Mai.
Hi, Shan. Hi, Boo. Hi.
I am over the moon for you.
Yeah, really?
I really am. So there's a school of thought that when you get with somebody, they're supposed to love you for who you are. And you're not supposed to change for love.
Yeah.
Because love is about acceptance. And if you have to change for love, then it's not the right person for you.
Right.
But you changed a lot.
A lot. I don't agree with that school of thought because I don't expect somebody to change for me, but I want them to grow and to become better versions of themselves. My favorite quality in a person that I think is so attractive is self-awareness. I love when someone's self-aware to be like, you know what, that was kind of narcissistic of me, or that was kind of selfish of me, or that. And then whatever you see when you call that out, do what you got to do in order to kind of grow out of that. For example, I have a really hot temper, but I didn't notice it in myself until I was with Jeezy.
Interesting. You didn't notice in your previous marriage?
No, because it has to do with the type of relationship you have and the type of respect you have for that person to mirror things back to you where you actually would stop you in your tracks and evaluate yourself, you know?
So you had it.
So I had it, but nobody ever called me out on it. Also, in my line of work, sometimes being a boss, you have a lot of people who just agree to what you want. They're yes men, right? And so I didn't notice that I had a hot temper until I got with Jeezy. And here's a person who is my equal and I really respect. And when I would spew some of my old habits, and he was like, like that's not flying here. And also, it would trigger him to come back at me with things where I was like, who the fuck do you think you are? But I was triggering him. So through work, we learned that we both have certain habits that to the everyday person, from friends, family, fans, they'll never see it. Mm-hmm. But to the person who loves us deep enough, you can press that button and boom, the dragon comes out. And we both have it. So we had to work on that. But he never told me to fix my temper. I just saw it and I thought, unless I want to stay in this place where I lose this person I love and I stay in my comfort zone of doing what I want to do and function the way I have for the last 40 years when nobody else had to stop me.
Which obviously has done quite well for you.
Right, I could have. But this was something greater that I wanted, and also a great challenge to myself to say, what if, now that I know it exists and the dragon's there, what if I got rid of that? How do I kill that dragon or store it in its place so that it never creates havoc in my life? And that took work. So for me, I think I don't want somebody who doesn't change. I want you to change and grow. If it means growing into an even better version of what I fell in love with.
Mm-hmm. There's also nothing wrong though too, because if you got a new job, you have to adapt to the job.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with asking your partner to change for you.
Yes.
Because you're in a relationship with me.
Especially if it's something we both mutually agree is not conducive to the relationship. Like if we know that you're jealous, and your jealousy, yes, it has to do with your insecurity. I could also help with maybe communicating in a certain more thorough way so that you don't have reason to feel jealous. But then after I do my part, you got to do your part and you got to get rid of that, because we all know jealousy doesn't help in a relationship, right? So I think there's things that both people have to commit to doing, but that is the turn on. That to me, like when you get turned on by somebody you just meet, it's gonna be those first things you meet about them. Their savviness, their wit, their clever, their humor, maybe their occupation, whatever, you're gonna get attracted to. Okay, once you've been together 5 years, 10 years, that's gonna be the same shit. It gets boring. But if that person is continuously changing and molding themselves to become better, maybe they didn't read before and now they started to read. Maybe they never cared about their body, all of a sudden they're doing workouts. Maybe they never were an extrovert, but now they're inviting some of your friends over and actually staying in the room to talk with your friends. Do you know how hot that is to see the person that you already fell in love with changing into these things that they just call upon themselves? And maybe because they heard Shan say, I'd really want you to hang out with my friends more. And they all of a sudden just took that upon themselves because they love you. That's awesome. Who's gonna complain about that?
There's this theory, it's called the self-expansion theory, and it essentially says that humans are unique to other animals in that rather than just needing the basics of food, water, shelter, safety, belonging, we also need achievement. And that's what makes us different. So we are just as driven to find somewhere safe to sleep at night as we are to get up in the morning and strive for something.
Yes.
So when we're in a relationship, it's an opportunity for achievement, because you can learn something else. You see the world broader. You have a new circle.
That.
So
when you're in a relationship, it's an opportunity for achievement.
Yes.
That is why I'm in my relationship. You just nailed it right there. What's that thing called again?
Self-expansion theory.
I'm all about the SET. That is, yes, that is me. Everybody always asks, why in this relationship has it changed you? Has it made you softer and different in these different ways? And of course he's a great man, but what is it beyond his looks or his accolades that make me so attracted to this relationship and working for it? Like actually working for it, like changing myself, growing, doing things. It's the ability to achieve. It makes me actually like myself more. You know what? I told him that the other day, Shan, and I was shocked the words came out of my mouth, but I just felt so comfortable I was able to say it. I said, I like myself better with you.
Yes.
I like who I am better with you. I thought I was dope before. I thought it was pretty damn fly, actually. But now, it's not just about me. And you have ignited that. And by the way, I want to make sure this is clear too. That feeling inside of me is now unlocked, and it isn't dependent on him being in my life. If he didn't work out and he ended up not being in my life, I will always remember this feeling I have and to apply that need for achievement in other great things that I find in my life, whether it's my career, which is why I think we love being career women. That always makes us want to achieve more. Being a mom, I guess, is another way. But I'm going to find that little spark in things that make me feel like I want to achieve more. So I like myself better through that activity or that new cause, that new reason. So for him, he's that in my life. But I don't want it to be just dependent on him.
Yes.
You know?
It's inspired by him.
Yes. It's inspired by him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this.
Yeah.
I never wanted to have a baby.
Yep.
And not only did I not want to have a baby, I've never been a baby person.
Yeah.
So all the dialogues about motherhood and momminess and announcements,
Never
and
did you.
I didn't give a fuck.
And it was actually annoying when people would tell you, there's a clock. You've got a clock and it's ticking and it'll hit you at some point. And you're passing 20s, 30s. You're like, no, I'm cool with this clock being non-existent in my whole being. That was me. In fact, we actually bonded off of agreeing not to have kids. When I met you a few years ago, I had you as a guest on my podcast. And when I met you in person and you also shared that you didn't want to have kids, I for some reason felt seen and I felt relieved that, look, you can be successful, driven, caring, and woman empowered and not want to have kids. I had been the only one to me in my world, but I needed to see more. And so you were that.
Oh,
then you go and you fucking have Ryu.
Right, yes.
So when you had Ryu, I remember the first thing I had to do was call you to be like, okay, wait, break this down to me. How did this happen? Is this planned? Is this what you want? And immediately when I heard from your voice, you just sounded you sounded ready. And you sounded like a shift happened. That's when I also confessed to you that I also saw things differently. And after working on myself, getting into a healthy relationship and now feeling supported in that decision, becoming a mother became just really automatic for me. And I was able to share that with you.
I want to talk about this 1,000% because not only did you not want to have kids, you were the president of the I Don't Want to Have Kids Club.
Yeah.
In a positive way.
Yeah, I started it myself.
What I was for you, for a piece of that, you were for millions of other people who were like, yes, see, look at Jeannie Mai. She doesn't want to have kids.
Yes.
And she's wonderful and amazing and has a husband and has a full life. And she's making this decision for herself. And thank you, Jeannie. So did a part of you feel like you were letting that community down? Because I also felt that too. Because people say very belittling things to you when you say you don't want to have kids.
Absolutely. Not only did I feel proud to have a platform where I could be the one that tells you, stop asking about whether or not we want to have kids. Stop putting it on us to feel guilty that we're not utilizing our right to have kids just because we're a woman and we plan not to. Like, I was the one that was kind of like speaking out about this, whether women wanted me to or not, but I was proud of it. Now that I've changed my mind, I want to still make it clear that I still believe women need that space. They still need that ability and that comfort and that acceptance to say, I also don't want to be a mom. I'm a woman, I've got my eggs, I've got time, and I don't want to be a mom. So I'm still there. Me shifting doesn't mean that I negate anything that I said earlier.
I want to say something that someone said to me, and I want to know what your reaction to this is. Okay? So we're going to role play. I'm going to say, Jeannie, the last time that I saw you, you didn't want to have kids.
Right.
And now you've evolved into a woman who knows that it's her time to share a life and to give life. It's beautiful.
You really dug in there with that evolve. Ooh, I didn't like that one. I'm trying to process it because I'm forgetting you were role playing, but I was like, what you mean by evolve? It has nothing to do with whether or not I chose to have kids. Evolving to me just means growing into understanding and accepting myself more. And that could also mean not choosing to have children. But that right there hit so low below the belt because you almost made me feel like I was stuck in a place that I would never recognize was lower than other women out there, that because now I changed my mind, I've caught up. And that is insulting.
Evolving to me, because when we think about evolution, like the evolutionary chart, right? Like it's going from being like a fish to, I'm going to stop right now. I have no idea what it is, but I just picture like little things getting bigger and bigger and more upright, more civilized.
Right.
And the version of me that didn't want to have kids was an evolved ass version of me.
Yeah.
Like I look back at that person and I'm like, you are fucking cool. You are strong and powerful.
Yeah.
And thank you. Because if you would have had kids back then with who you were with,
No. Our world would be in a dangerous place.
You were evolved then.
Yeah.
Now it's like, I didn't go here to a level up. I just continued on the path of self-love, of ownership, of accountability, and of curiosity.
Yes.
That made the best decision for me 5 years ago and has that decision right now.
For me, I feel great just saying, I changed my mind. I literally just changed my mind. I have always worked on growing, healing, and evolving. And when I look at when I didn't want to have kids, I was really happy and content with where I was, but I was still trying to grow. Today, let's just say I didn't have a child. I'd still see myself as evolved and continuing to. You never become fully evolved, right? But something happened and I just changed my mind. I said, you know what? Because I'm in a trustworthy relationship and I also am not being so hard on myself anymore and I've healed, I changed my mind and I said, you know what? I want to be a mom. I chose it. But the woman who didn't want to have a kid, I actually can see her right here. She's right here. It's not so changed that I don't know who she is. I remember her and I remember how she feels. And to be honest with you, as much as I love this baby and I'm so excited for this life, if it didn't happen for me, I'd be okay.
Yes.
I'd actually still be like already having looked forward to this life that I had planned out without having a child. And that would be all right for me. So it's not, and I think every woman's different. Some women, they switch so hard that they're like, no, now their end all be all is they want to have a kid. Even if it means through a donor, they don't have to have a relationship. But for me, it's not that. So I really wouldn't agree with that word. It wouldn't sit well with me.
I love that. And what I love about your story, because you even highlighted that twice to me now, that it really is about partnership, being with somebody that unlocked this as not just a potential for you, but as a dream for you.
For me.
We'll just disclaim right now, this is all for you. You ain't talking for all women of all mankind.
Please, yes.
So did you have a kid because he wanted a kid? Because you already had 2 kids. So let me say this. When I didn't want to have kids, I sought out men who had kids because I knew they wouldn't pressure me.
Ooh.
So I was like, yes, you already have a kid. Like, good. You're not going to bother me.
Yeah.
So I didn't get that impression because of the fact that he already had two. So I'm sure it was optional, but I would love to hear from you. What was his involvement in this decision for you?
It definitely crossed my mind that he already had kids, even though I wasn't looking purposely for men like that, which is so sleuthy of you. My God.
I'm very like,
wow.
I'm doing the math.
It's good. It's good. And it's mathing. So it's good. For me, I only decided to have kids maybe a year ago, and Jeezy and I have been together for 3 years. So for 2 years, we decided not to. But at the same time, when our relationship started getting really inosculated, that's when I was at a better place. He was at a great place. We were both doing therapy. We both had gone through some life situations together that bonded us even more. And we looked at each other and we were like, I don't know how you feel about this, but what if we had kids? How do you feel about that? And it was the most honest, beautiful conversation because
who was the person who brought that? You made it seem like it was Disney, where you guys both came to the kitchen table like, oh, we want to have kids. Oh my God, you said it 10 times, right?
Say it at the same time. 1, 2, 3. Let's have kids. No, I think I actually did say it in a way where it was like a 1, 2, 3 thing, where I was like, okay, on the count of 3, we're going to confess something we haven't told each other before. I'm going to go first. And he was like, okay. I was like, 1, 2, 3. I want to have kids. He was like, 1, 2, 3. I actually am thinking about it too. It was kind of like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is Disney.
Well, I think that you're asking me about the great parts of the growth in our relationship, and then the awareness to have changed our mind in certain areas. But you're not asking about the things that we had to go through. We had to go through a lot too.
Yes.
We definitely had.
Well, I mean, the moment is Disney. I mean, Disney is an hour and a half.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit that happened in between.
Yeah, there's villains.
There's villain. Exactly.
There's
the arguments that we didn't see in between.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a yeast infection that one of the princesses got.
For sure,
there's
the
all
funk
that.
was real, yes.
Yeah, so we don't see everything, but I do acknowledge when moments are picturesque, they're picturesque. And that is a picturesque moment.
Yeah.
Were you afraid by those thoughts? Were you?
Yes.
Because it's not even just a life change, it's a brand change.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot, and your brand is you.
Yeah, my brand is me, and my brand has always been I'm me, and I don't happen to want to have children.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it was.
I don't actually know you without Jeezy.
That's crazy. Yeah, you're right, because you met me after I was with
It's interesting because even when I see pictures of you, you were even just showing me that book of text messages, and there's a photo of you, I guess, in the beginning of the relationship. I don't even recognize that person. You seemed very different. The badassness, the sexiness, I think maybe here's the thing too. My perception of you before was more conservative.
I would definitely say I've never been conservative. I've always been, I definitely love God. And I love having that North Star of faith where I don't need to go crack that bitch's head against the cement because she did me wrong. I'm going to just let God do it. Like that kind of thing. Like there's a North Star where he's like, Jeannie, don't worry about her. I got you. Or,
but like sexually, are you totally different?
Sexually, I think I'm much more adventurous. I think I'm much more adventurous and playful and curious. And I've always been that way, but I've never unleashed that because you can't trust people nowadays. Like I can't go sending people pictures, or I've never partaked in that. Never partaked in a booty call. Never partaked in a sending of nudes because of my trust for other people. I've always seen myself as like, I'm up here, so until you can get to my level, you can't play in this playground. Mm-hmm. But now that I have somebody that I really trust in that way, then I go ahead and I'm like, yo, ollie free. Like, we about to have a ball, you know?
So it's not that the relationship necessarily changed you, is that it gave you space to be more yourself.
Yes. Yeah, I've never been conservative or prude or...
Because what's the difference between you and Beyonce?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like when you think about images of Jay-Z and Beyonce being out, you know what I mean? This is a crazy sentence to say. I'm aware of that because if someone said that to me, I would immediately be like, I have to go to the bathroom and masturbate to myself. What did you just say?
I love you. My man, he is a legend. I do recognize Jeezy. My God, his living legacy of work is something that I'm in awe of every day of being with him because he lives and breathes serving the culture and being about his community. No matter even today, like, of course I know he has nice things, but I hear him in his daily walk thinking about how can he maintain his roots of where he came from? How can he maintain the authenticity of being a Black man in America? How can he still sit in the same circles and have the same conversations that people in the hood don't get to have because nobody's listening? You know what I mean? Like that's his blood. And I spend every day learning so that I understand how to stay out of his way, but at the same time support and contribute to whatever I can, being his wife, you know? So I recognize that for sure. And then for me, you know, I love our relationship together, and I can definitely say that nobody has seen him the way he is with me, and nobody has seen me the way I am with him.
Oh,
nobody. So that's new to me too. So seeing that and discovering that is really exciting for us both.
You're finding yourself now in this space where not only do you love yourself more through the partnership that you're in and like yourself more, which I think is very, very different.
Yeah.
Liking yourself in reflection of your partner, but you now are creating something with your partner, which is another life.
Yes.
Have you thought about what does the next version of you look like with baby Jay in your arms?
Yeah, I think what I'm going to prepare for is to be able to talk candidly about everything with my kid. I don't like being sheltered in my own walk of life. I didn't like not having conversations with my parents about being the only Asian family on the block. All these things that I didn't understand about my identity, I didn't get to talk about with my parents until I got into a more open space of diversity and friends and the power of using my voice and the giving myself the right to speak up. I don't want my kid to have to wait till that time. My kid's going to know that they are Black and that they are Asian, and they are going to really own what came with that.
I think it's interesting because when you get into a relationship, you want more of the other person, right? And they want more of you, and you learn what that looks like together. And then when you have a baby, it's not about take more of me, it's how can I give you more of us?
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I necessarily do that, because I don't go out of my way to invest in Jared's culture with Ryan. Like, that's your job. So I think it's really beautiful that you're being mindful of, like, I'm not going to give you more of me.
Yeah.
It's the us, one, that brought you into this world. Yeah. It's the us that actually were inspired to bring you into this world. And it's the us that I want to give you.
But you don't find that you want to do that with him as well? Do you want to learn about Jared's culture as he should about yours, so that it's a unified family front? You know what I mean? No. Interesting. Yeah. As an American, it's my responsibility to understand the lives and the needs of the cultures that exist around me. So whether it's Black, Native American, Hispanic, like I live and dwell with all of my neighbors that are of different races. So I need to understand what each journey is, because not everybody is the same. But then now, being married to a Black man, I need to understand even more his journey and his perspective, so that I can be of genuine support and allyship to him. But then now, having a blood child who's going to be of those mixed races, I need to learn even more and adopt it, because I can't have this Black child only be grown up to know Vietnamese culture. This Black child can't just be Vietnamese and not, understand where his or her ancestors come from, or what hardship the Jenkins had to go through specifically, or what Black people had to go through to get a voice in this country. Like, there's so much more now, because you carry the blood of lineage in of so many who have done so much and died to be in your place,
Yes.
So that's how that has evolved for me.
A big shout out to Jeannie for her life's work. I just can't put it anything else than that. You are a leader, you are a thought starter, you are a change maker, a path paver. I adore you. And everybody who is listening, if you want more Jeannie in your life, she gives so much of herself, specifically on her TikTok and her Instagram, which you can find at the Jeannie Mai if you're not already following. And also be sure to check out her YouTube channel, Hello Hane. And there's also a podcast called Listen Hane, which I've been a guest on a couple of times. So go and check those episodes out. Speaking of checking out, before we wrap this bad boy up and leave and go about our lives feeling all warm and fuzzy from all that Jeannie just shared, I brought on two people who had two very different opinions about change. My sister, Lauren Morrison, who's also the lead producer on this podcast, and my husband, Jared Brady, who has had to change a lot in this relationship. And we really thought and analyzed and discussed together, is change for love always inspiring?
Losing yourselves in relationships.
You're not gonna do the Eminem song?
You want to lose yourself.
In the relationship.
You better never let it go.
I'll cut this out later.
You want to lose yourself.
In the relationship.
I'll cut this out later.
All right, so let me ask you guys the $1 million question of the episode. Do you think you should change yourself if it means keeping the relationship you want?
Yeah, I think, for one, if you like the person that you're changing to, because a lot of times you're in a relationship and that person can inspire you to a better version of yourself. I think where most people think of when they think of changing themselves, they're thinking of losing themselves, when in reality, you're just building yourself.
I think that there is probably an element or a time frame where you do lose yourself, where you do feel loss of identity, and you have to rebuild that. Kind of akin it to like when you have a child. There's that time when you're adjusting so much to this other person being in your life, this new relationship, that you lose who you are. And then you kind of have to have that moment where you're like, wait a minute, these are the parts that I want to keep, but these are the parts that I want to maintain about myself.
Yeah, losing yourself.
I just said the same thing twice. Keep and maintain. You get it.
You've got to make sure that it's very clear.
Well, when I was making this episode, there was two major reflections that I had, which is why I brought the two of you on. The one reflection I had actually for you, Jared, was when I was writing the introduction. And in writing the introduction, I said that there's a reason why in this relationship, I have been leaning into the change and enthusiastic about the change that you have caused in me. And I do think that you have done a lot of work on me. But I've loved it and I've been appreciative of it. I've never felt resentful. And in my previous relationship, I resented and despised him in many ways for the constant change that he wanted me to go through. And as I was writing out the differences, one thing came to mind because I said there was 3 reasons that make it different. One is the delivery. And your golden line is...
Put your partner in their place without provoking their ego.
Yes, this is a skill that you have. You have the ability to let people know that they're fucking up without making them feel like a fuck up. Then number 2, I said it's about the volume, because you have to feel like you're getting to live in the after. You're not constantly a before, because you want those moments of like, oh wow, look how much I've changed, and the person being like, yeah, you're incredible, you're awesome, look at your after photos, okay, cool, some time has passed, let's work on this next thing. And then finally I said it's because you have to like the changes that person is instilling in you, or your value system has to be the same, because in my past relationship, the things that he wanted me to change towards, I didn't value at the time. What I wanted to say is it's that middle piece that really made me reflect, because I was like, fuck, am I that person for Jared? Do you feel like the volume of requests that I've had for you has been a problem? Because you've said to me before, like, you feel like you're always on your heels in this relationship.
Yeah. That's a tough question to answer, because I think I don't think I would despise them if we stay together, right? Like, I think I could see myself flipping it into a negative if we ended up, splitting apart and being like, man, I gave all of my young 20s to this woman and I've changed so much when I could have been evolving in my own way. I can see myself flipping it that way. But in this moment, I don't think that you're a person that everything that you have asked me to evolve in that I don't directly benefit from. Mm-hmm. Well, does that...
Yeah, that makes sense. But I just think that's also a note for me to say, not even to ask you a question, just to tell you in general, that was an aha for me of give Jared more time to bask in the afterness. I think that I can tend to have a wave of requests for you. And then when you start to improve in one area, there's another area that crops up that I'm like, what about this? Or there's an old area, a la physical affection that I'm like, still not good here. So you never get to feel, I think, a long period of time where you're just great and celebrated. Because that's the kind of thing that I was battling with this episode of, yes, we want our partners to expand us and challenge us, but also in our romantic relationships, we're supposed to feel accepted and loved for who we are. So there's a balance that has to be struck there.
Yeah, there is. And I think that, it's like flaws and all, right? They love me for my imperfections. And yes, if that relationship matters enough to you and that you want to continue to be and build with that person, then yeah, you do need to make a choice in terms of how much do I really want to hold on to this trait that I have or to this way that I'm being? Is it worth it? Or should I just shrug my shoulders and say, if you don't like it, there's a door?
I think I don't know if you and Jared can relate on this point, because Jared and I are 6 years apart. Lauren, you and Chris are 8 years apart.
Yeah.
You met Chris at 24.
Yeah.
Jared met me at 24.
Yeah.
Have a moment right now, guys.
Let's have a moment. Tired of being bossed around.
Got scooped up early.
What's it like dating somebody older and then as a result having to advance your timeline?
Yeah, you have to go quicker, and they just have the benefit of more experience and more intention behind who they're going to partner with. Like, things that I had to let go of immediately were, you can't be hanging out with other dudes. You can't swear, or there's no name calling, or these shirts that you think are appropriate are not appropriate. And it's that level of intention paired with the intensity of how fast our relationship went that makes it shocking, and made a lot of people look at me at the time and be like, wow, Lauren is changing. Lauren is losing herself. And they would be accurate in that, because I was so...
Do you feel like you were finding your potential, or losing yourself?
Losing myself, because I'm in my early 20s. Like, I'm just figuring this out, right? I'm just sort of getting the sense of what is good for me, what my boundaries are, what it is that I want in a relationship. But what I did know from the pit of my heart was that this was a person that I saw myself with. So I wanted to make those changes. And then, of course, as we kind of went through another evolution of our relationship, it was me now asking for the changes, right? It's me now telling him, you need to prioritize your family over your work. You need to be a better communicator. These are what I will accept and not accept. So it kind of ebbs and flows.
Do you know what I think? I relate to Chris in this way because, again, I met Jared at 24. Chris met you at 24. So Chris often wants to take responsibility for your come up.
Yes.
Because your come up happened in direct line with the two of you coming together.
Right.
Which is what happens when you meet somebody in your mid-20s, right? Like, you change a lot during that time. And so you've butt up against that before.
Big time. Well, because it's like I felt like I would have to remind him, or I needed to make it very clear that, just so you know, before you and I got together, I was a straight A student. I was president of the student council. I had an admirable job in like the music industry. Like, I was building a career. When he and I met, I had hit a low point in a career transition, but I just there was this narrative that I felt was starting to take over in our relationship, where because he was so much more further along in life, like, I plucked her out of nowhere and I made this like I didn't want to be a pretty woman story. So I used to stick to this narrative that whether you came or not, I was still going to be amazing. What I appreciated in the episode with you and Jeannie Mai was that I am the person that I am today because of his contribution to my life and to my career. But it took me a long time to give that acknowledgement, because I was so determined to fight the narrative that I was anyone else's come up but my own.
Yeah, and I don't battle with that per se, but what I do battle with is, like, I am completely okay and understand that I am where I am at today because of the growth that you have challenged me to make. However, I don't think that either of us would be in the position that we are at.
It's very comfortable for me to say that I wouldn't be who I am today without you.
Yeah.
Lauren, as somebody who has known me, do you think that I've changed?
Oh my gosh, yes. Sorry, finish your question.
Do you think that the change of shirt is nice?
No, absolutely. But in a way that I truly do feel that is for the better. I remember early on in yours and Jared's relationship, because you're older, because you were further along in your career especially, and because you do have a very dominant personality, and at times aggressive personality, there was this concern because I didn't know Jared and he was just always very quiet and standoffish, and we lived in a different country, so we didn't really get to see him very often. But like, man, Shan's gonna eat him alive.
I'm still here.
But he's still here. But not only are you still here, but I remember witnessing the first time when I came to LA and I stayed with you and Jared and being like, Shan's different, but in the best ways, where she would check herself before she would respond. She wasn't like where not just you, but like the two of us would be quick to name call. There was patience, there was dialogue, there was respect to kind of say that if you said something, it was like okay, like agreeableness, which is something that you were not always
I've struggled with,
which you've struggled with, but that came so beautifully with you and Jared. And I remember when I witnessed you and Jared together, it's like I instantly fell in love with your relationship, because I fell in love with how that relationship had changed you for the better. I saw a much better version of you, and I had a completely different respect for Jared.
This is a great Yelp review. I really appreciate this dialogue. I feel closer to everybody because of the connection I have with you.
Yeah.
And I feel that way about what I share with Lauren too. You know, I feel closer to everybody because of the connection I have with Lauren. Like good, healthy relationships give back everywhere. And yeah, maybe that's kind of the litmus test to take of. But then there's the tricky thing too, which I know we're trying to wrap this up. But the tricky thing is sometimes you grow to a better version of yourself, but that limits the connections that you used to have, because now that version of you doesn't apply.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
I experienced that heavily.
Yes.
And that's with everything.
And
though.
when people point the finger, you had this with a friend actually.
A couple.
Because you grew a lot. And then rather than them looking at your growth as a positive thing, they looked at it like a negative thing.
Oh, for sure.
So you can't always use your friends and family as a gauge to say whether the growth is good or not.
Is it good for yourself? That's what it really comes down to. Am I happy with myself? Is my life better because of this growth? Friends, people are going to fall off. They're not going to be able to keep up. And that's okay, you know. But as long as when you wake up, you're like, I am better than I was before, that's what all matters.
I'm learning a lot about myself through this podcast. I'm learning to be better at my job through this podcast. And one of the responsibilities that I have taken on in my work traditionally is I want to give you concrete clarity. I want to push you in the right direction, because I find that in the intimate space, people flounder a lot. So for that reason, one of my pet peeve conclusions has been, it depends. Because it depends leaves you with no action. It leaves you feeling like, well, I'll just kind of see how things go. And I don't want that. But the real truth of the matter is, it does depend. But I want to be clear that it depends is not an opportunity to say, well, we wrap that up. Instead, it's a call to action for you to dive deeper into yourself and into your intimate connections in order to decipher what are the dependents for you, and then to make that concrete decision. So I'm going to concretely say, for me, letting love change me has been a positive thing, and I will continue to lean into change in my relationship. So for me personally, I do think that it is a healthy thing to let love change you, make fundamental changes to your characters, your core value system, and to your morals. But is that the same answer for you? It depends. And which is why your homework is to go and find a group of people who you love and trust and have this exact same dialogue with. Kind of like how I got to have a really cool conversation with my people. And speaking of my people, if you want to hear more from Jared, make sure you check out his podcast, Enjoy the Podcast. They release new episodes every Monday on YouTube and Apple Podcast. Also, my sister, Lauren Morrison, is an executive coach. Also, again, like I said, the lead producer of this podcast. And you can find more of Lauren and her inspiration on her Instagram. This is Lauren Elizabeth. Shout out to you for being here again. We're rolling, guys. We are really doing this thing, and it keeps getting better. And it's largely because of you and your presence, but also the fact that you guys have been going and giving this podcast a 5-star review on Apple. That is driving discussion. It is amplifying the podcast in the algorithm, and it's allowing me to reach out to bigger guests to say, this is a podcast that people are invested in, that people are excited about. So if you haven't done this already, please go to Apple Podcasts and give it a 5-star review. Also, if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, just go ahead. I think we're ready to commit to each other. If you have a moment, click that follow button, click that subscribe button, add this to your library so that, again, you're reminded next week when we have a podcast coming out. They drop every single hump day. And speaking of humping, if you want to further our intimacy, make sure you join my newsletter. This is how you get reminders for the podcast, information about casting, because as you can see, each episode we have an audience inclusion point. It's also how I'll be giving new offers to you when I have a new course coming out. So if you don't want to miss anything, go to shanboodram.com/list, and that's how you add yourself to the list. At shanboodram.com, you can also find information about courses and links to my socials so that we can just keep going, keep getting closer. Because I love being close. Ooh, it feels good to be close. And it's cuffing season. Woo!
Lovers and friends. I'ma take you on a trip, baby. I don't pretend. I say, lovers and friends. I'ma hold you down to the end. I say.
Lovers and Friends is executive produced by Shared Entertainment's Shan Boodram. It is produced by Boodram and Krizia Cruz with production support from 2S Entertainment's Adam Krasner, Isabel Gallant, and Brianna Barone. The Lovers and Friends theme song is produced by Sean Ross and performed by Jared Brady, who also does the scoring and engineering on our episodes. Lovers and Friends is powered by Audio Boom and made possible by our incredible sponsors who you can show love to by reading our show notes.